Morning. The hour of 9:45 having arrived, I'd like to call the Kane County Board meeting of January 9th, 2018 to order. Clerk, call the roll.
Allen, Auger, Marrero, Dahl, Gavin, Rouse, Gillum, Hernandez, Hoshite, Ishmael, Kenyon, Zarek, Leonard.
Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the prayer. This morning we have Environmental Water Resources Management Coordinator Jessica Mino, to come to the microphone to lead us in the pledge, and then Ken Anderson will lead us in prayer.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's pray. Lord, we just come before you this morning and thank you for an opportunity to gather, to make decisions, to hopefully make a difference in Kane County. As we come into a new year, we just pray that each of these special people here would have learned from 2017 and look forward to 2018. I pray you would bless them with wisdom and discernment. I pray that you would bless them and their families with prosperity and health. And I pray that you just give them all the resources they need so that they can provide for the public's health, safety, and welfare. We thank you for their time, and we thank you for all those who serve in various capacities to make a difference here in Kane County. So we just lift them up to you and pray your will be done. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Jessica and Ken. May I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of the December 12th, 2017 meeting? So moved by Brian Dahl, second by Susan Sterrett. Are there any thoughts, comments, or changes? If not, all those in favor of approving the minutes say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. The minutes are approved. I do have one thought for the Chairman Short program this morning that I'd like to share with the board. Over the last couple of months, the budget is becoming harder and harder each year. I'm more deeply grateful every year for the very hard work and the competence that goes into everybody's joint effort to get there to a conclusion that then the county, serving 532,000 constituents, can fulfill its duties. As I've been listening, I understand that there was a program that had a special priority in several of our board members' minds. And the vote on the budget became symbolic of their support for that, as opposed to the much bigger issue. It's an important issue that was of concern, but the most important vote of an entire year is allocating $250 million with work that had gone in hundreds of people, 4 months, 32 different meetings. But it's an important concern when board members come to the conclusion that in the end, in order to communicate my support for one thing, I have to vote no for the other thing. So I understand that. So what I would suggest, as I've suggested to a couple of the people who I've listened to, is that if you have circumstances where you think that it's an important symbolic vote to make, go ahead and just let me know. And what we'll do is we'll craft something that pinpoints that issue so that we can have a yes or no vote on that, so you can demonstrate your support for that issue rather than it becoming not a tail that wags the dog, but something that is very important but with something that is conflated then with something that is determinant of our entire work for the rest of the coming year. So it would be for your consideration. I volunteer to work with any of you who have an issue where you feel that it's especially important. I know I've been in the same position on votes before, and so I'm very sympathetic. Okay, we don't have any speakers on agenda items today, so we'll go to the zoning petition. I'd like to ask Development Committee Chairman Kirk Kazark to rise and discuss and make a motion to approve each of the zoning petitions on today's agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. Petition 4432 is located in Plato Township. It is proposed rezoning of an F district farming to an F1 district rural residential. The 2040 plan calls for agricultural. There is no objectors. The recommendation to the zoning board was for approval. The recommendation for the development committee was also for approval. I'll make the motion to approve at this time.
So moved by Mr. Kazark, second by Ms. Woniecki. Are there any questions, comments, concerns? If not, clerk, call the roll.
Ellen? Auger? Ferrero? Dahl? Fries? Gillum? Hoshite? Ishmael? Kenyon? Kazarek? Lewis? Leonard? Martin? Molina? Sanchez? Shefflo? Silva? Smith? Sterrett? Thomas? Wegman? Winicky?
Okay, petition is approved. Mr. Kazark for petition 4433.
Petition 4433 is located in Caneville Township. It is proposed rezoning from an F district farming to an F1 district rural residential. The 2040 plan calls for agricultural. The recommendation to the zoning board was for approval. Development committee also unanimously voted for approval. I'll make the motion to approve at this time.
So moved by Mr. Kazark, second by Mr. Fraz. Any thoughts or questions? If not, clerk, call the roll.
Ellen? Auger? Ferrero? Dahl? Gillum? Okay, Hoshite? Ishmael? Kenyon? Kazarek?
Yes.
Leonard? Lewis? Martin? Molina? Sanchez? Shefflo? Silva? Smith? Sterrett? Thomas? Wegman? Winicky? Passes.
Okay, the petition is approved. Mr. Kazark, petition 4434.
Our final petition of the morning is petition 4434, located in Elgin Township. It is proposed rezoning of a portion of property from F district farming to a B3 district business with a special use for yards and buildings for a landscaping business.
Okay,
The recommendations of the zoning board was for approval. Development committee also voted for approval, however, with the following stipulations. The first being the petitioner needs to dedicate 33 feet of right-of-way from the center line of Highland Avenue along both parcels. The second is the septic field shall not be in the dedicated right-of-way. And the third stipulation was that the asphalt apron needs to be placed in the new dedicated right-of-way before the pavers are installed. I'll make the motion to approve with the three stipulations.
okay, so moved by Mr. Kazark, second by Ms. Allen. Any thoughts or questions? If not, clerk, call the roll.
Ellen? Auger? Ferrero? Dahl? Fraz? Gillum? Hoshite? Ishmael? Kenyon? Kazarek? Leonard? Lewis? Martin? Molina? Sanchez? Shefflo? Silva? Smith? Sterrett? Thomas? Wegman? Winicky? Passes.
Okay, the petition is approved. On resolutions, ordinances, on the consent agenda, would anyone like to remove an item from the consent agenda? Mr. Shefflo, did you have one that you wanted consideration? I'm sorry? It's already off. Okay, thank you. Any others? If not, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? So moved by Mr. Dahl, second by Mr. Kazarek. Clerk, call the roll.
Ellen? Auger? Ferrero? Dahl? Fraz? Gillum? Hoshite? Ishmael? Kenyon? Kazarek? Leonard? Lewis? Martin? Molina? Sanchez? Shefflo? Silva? Smith? Sterrett? Thomas? Wegman? Winnicke?
Okay, so the motion is approved. Now for off consent, who would like to move number 1812 for discussion and potential approval? So moved by Ms. Sterrett, second by Mr. Hoshite. This is on authorizing contract for medical services at Kane County Adult Justice Center for the Office of the Sheriff. That be Mr. Shefflow, is that the one you have? Yes. Okay, Mr. Shefflow.
So I raised this issue, I guess, at the executive committee. This resolution didn't go through finance because of the holidays. I just wanted to say a couple of things first. I support this contract in Wexford. They've been with us quite a while. They're a low bidder, so I think we want to get it, if possible, get that contract approved today. As far as the sheriff's budget, the sheriff has done a good job in the past. Even when we lost the federal revenue, he came in pretty close to budget, if not under budget. And so I think that that's something that he can do today as well, or do under these circumstances, or potentially. So what I'm going to propose an amendment to the resolution to defer the consideration of the budget adjustment at this time. For three comments on that. We don't have last year's, at least to my knowledge, last year's budget finalized, so we don't know what the final surplus amounts are from the various departments. I believe the sheriff does have a surplus there. The county can then gather more information regarding the other departments and what their budget requests may be, and what their surpluses are, and what revenues may be coming in. I mean, down the road, we'll know if we're trending above on sales tax or below on sales tax. So that's a purpose of my motion to amend, is to give us the opportunity to kind of look at this deliberately in the finance department. I have emailed the language. I have paper copies here. I consulted with Joe Onzek, and it's learned there, if we simply delete all reference to the budget adjustment, then we're not in conformance with our financial policies, because we're entering into a contract that is not budgeted. So this paragraph intends to say that it is going to be paid out of the existing sheriff's budget. I know full well that's probably not going to be entirely possible by the sheriff, but it's a fix that we can make down the road. That's my purpose. So with the chairman's permission, I move to amend the resolution that's on the floor to delete the reference to the budget adjustment as stated, and insert this paragraph saying that it will come from, now therefore be it further resolved by the county board that the sheriff is expected to absorb as much of the unbudgeted expense of the contract as possible through savings in other line items in his budget, and that a budget adjustment will be considered later in the year for any remaining shortfall.
Okay, so it's delete and add. So moved by Mr. Shefflow, second by Ms. Allen. Any discussion? Mr. Frost.
I'm all for more discussion, full disclosure, and I appreciate Doug's concerns. I guess my only question, whether it be to the sheriff or finance chairman or judicial chairman, what would be the repercussions of a 30-day delay on this issue? That's my only question.
Okay, thank you for the question, and Mr. Hoshite will answer it. Mr. Hoshite?
As Mr. Shefflow indicated, the contract technically is already expired. We're in an extended time period, so I think there's urgency to get the contract in place. I do agree with Mr. Shefflow about the analysis. We have not finished the last year's financial statements, so if we have excess funds, that could be a source of funding instead of using this year's contingency fund. So I'm in favor of Mr. Shefflow's amendment with the understanding that Finance Committee will continue to work with the sheriff on his budget as we get through the year. Obviously, a medical contract for the residents at the corrections facility is a necessity. We have to fund that, and so we're going to have to look at our other resources as we go through the year.
Thank you, Mr. Hoshait. Any other thoughts, comments? If not, we have a motion and a second on an amendment to number 1812. First on the amendment, clerk call the roll.
Allen? Aye. Auger? Yes. Ferrero? No. Dahl?
Yes.
Franz? Yes. Gillum? Yes. Hoshait?
Yes.
Ishmael? No. Kenyon?
Yes.
Kazarek?
Yes.
Leonard?
Yes.
Lewis?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Molina? Sanchez?
Yes.
Shefflo?
Yes.
Silva? Smith?
Yes.
Sterrett? Yes. Thomas? No. Wegman? Yes. And Winicky? Yes. Motion passes.
Okay, so now number 1812 is amended. Are there any thoughts on the resolution as amended? If not, clerk call the roll.
Allen? Aye. Auger? Yes. Ferrero? Yes. Dahl?
Yes.
Fries?
Yes.
Gillum? Yes. Hoshait?
Yes.
Ishmael? Kenyon?
Yes.
Kazarek?
Yes.
Leonard?
Yes.
Lewis?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Molina? Sanchez?
Yes.
Shefflo?
Yes.
Silva? Smith?
Yes.
Sterrett? Thomas? Wegman? Winicky? Passes.
Resolution passes. Who would like to make a motion to discuss and potentially approve number 17342? Ms. Allen, this is to authorize additional funding under Resolution R16-165 for electronic solutions. So moved by Ms. Allen, second by Mr. Fraz. Who would like to address this? Ms. Allen, would you rise?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Happy New Year, everybody. This resolution came out of administration, was tabled at the last county board meeting, and then went back to administration, and now is back again. This is a resolution that is budgeted and has already been bid and approved by the group of people who opened the bid, and that included some of the people, some of the police chiefs from municipalities that would be affected, as well as our own IT people. And what happened was this is the next move to make our new Tyler technology system seamless from the police officer on the street who will write a ticket, who will then move that ticket into the system, and it will go all the way through until the person involved is not guilty or pays a fine or is incarcerated or is eventually put on probation. All of that will be part of this new system so that we're not dealing with paper and 3x5 cards anymore. The reason that we pulled this off of the agenda after it was bid and approved in administration was that there are some of our partners, our municipalities, are looking at doing an adjudication process, which has to do with a software package also. And if you think about how we have adjudication in our own development department, where people have a less formal system of having their tickets heard, this is a variation on that at the municipal level. So having had some more meetings and some more conversations, some of our municipal partners are in fact going to go forward with that software, but for our purposes and for the sheriff, we want to go forward with the Tyler software, which is what this is about. If anyone has any questions, I'll probably refer you to Roger, who can do this a lot better than I, but at least that's the short summary, and I hope it's helpful. Thank you.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Are there any comments or questions? If not, clerk call the roll.
Allen? Aye. Auger? Yes. Ferrero? Yes. Davis? I'm sorry, Dahl?
Yes.
Davis? Hang on, bear with me. Fries?
Yes.
Gillum? Yes. Hoshait?
Yes.
Ishmael? Yes. Kenyon?
Yes.
Kazarek?
Yes.
Leonard?
Yes.
Lewis?
Yes.
Martin? Molina? Sanchez?
Yes.
Shefflo?
Yes.
Silva? Smith? Yes. Sterrett? Yes. Thomas? Yes. Wegman? Yes. And Winicky? Yes. Passes.
Okay, so the resolution is approved. May I have a motion and a second to go into executive session to discuss personnel, settlement of claims, and pending litigation? So moved by Ms. Sterrett, second by Mr. Leonard. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Okay, I'd like to call the board meeting back to order. Now, speakers on non-agenda items. Just as a matter of protocol, individuals who have registered to speak on non-agenda items prior to 8:30 on the morning of the meeting day are allowed 3 minutes to address the board. Total public comment time for items not listed on the agenda is limited to 15 minutes. We ask speakers naturally to refrain from statements or remarks or conduct that is otherwise disruptive to the conduct of the county board or which causes a disturbance naturally. I believe that we have at least 4 people on my record who have signed up. Attorney Tim O'Neill is going to address Mr. O'Neill. If you'd come forward and give your address. Working conditions at the Kane County Adult Corrections Facility. And Mr. O'Neill is speaking as a 4th-generation Kane County taxpayer who's a lawyer for public safety officers across northern Illinois. So you do the negotiations for our correction officers?
I do.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Laws and Mr. McMahon, ladies and gentlemen. As the chairman said, I'm a 4th-generation native of Aurora. Born and raised in Aurora, I've lived in Geneva the last 30 years. As a bit more of a background, I was the labor counsel for Sheriff Ramsey on the management side for 12 years before 2006. Now I represent the employees. As our invocation stated, there's a duty to protect the health, welfare, and safety of the citizens of Kane County. I want to go through a series of facts. I have all the documentation to back this up. In 2009, former Chairman McConaughey signed a contract for 15 female federal detainees. The next year, 2010, the Department of Corrections did their annual inspection and found that the sheriff had to hire 8 new officers to get up to minimum safe standing. At that time, there were 120 officers in the jail. 2011, there was a study, the Barron study commissioned by Chairman McConaughey. It showed that the inmate to officer ratio is the highest in the area. There was a study done last year that confirmed that the inmate to officer ratio is still the highest of the 7 surrounding counties. Right now we have 116 officers, 4 less than in 2010. The IDOC recommendation of 128 is still out there, and I've seen a board, a recommendation for 136. The Merit Commission is the hiring entity for the officers at the King County Jail and the Sheriff's Office. Typically, they get over 200 applications. 3 years ago, they got 232 applications for corrections officers. This last year, they got 79 applications. Some of those that were hired have left for other agencies. As in their exit interviews, they said because of the working conditions and because of the low salary. In fiscal year 2017, there were 397 mandated overtime. That's not voluntary overtime. That's when at the end of their shift, they're short. They say you got to stay and work regardless of your personal schedule. So far in fiscal year 2018, there were 97 mandated overtimes just in the month of December. Last year, the overtime was $674,000. That's enough to hire 6 more officers with full pay and benefits. In 2014, the jail was locked down every Saturday and Sunday because of the shortage of officers. Since December 1st of this year, there's been 30 lockdowns in about 38 days. May 13th of this year, there was a tragedy at Delnor. There was a single officer coverage at that facility against all applicable standards, the federal, the state, the surrounding counties. On October 8th of this year, there was an officer on duty in his pod with 64 inmates where he was jumped, beaten severely, strangled. He suffered brain damage or concussion and vocal cord damage. It took over a minute for backup to arrive to help him out. When you're fighting hand on hand with a bunch of inmates, a minute is like a lifetime. The midnight shift routinely runs for one officer in charge of a pod, which is 64, or sometimes 2 pods, 128. I asked for a brief study in the last month. They've been running between 8 and 9 officers on the midnight shift for a full complement of inmates. What happens if there's a medical issue? What happens if there's a fire? What happens if there's a riot? There are 9 officers in the jail in charge of 560 inmates. I was going to sit back and wait to see how our elected officials reacted. And when I saw that the reaction was to cut the budget 3.6%, I could hold silent no longer. I'm a taxpayer first and foremost. My family came to Aurora, my dad's family to Aurora in 1856, my mother's family to Batavia in 1880. The people deserve to be safe. These officers here deserve to be safe. There are people leaving. There's one that left a couple months ago. Before his pension, he could even collect his pension because he could not take the conditions anymore. They get hit on, they get yelled at, they're disrespected, they get spat upon. We need more officers. I would invite you to come. I understand that 6 or 8 of you have come to see the conditions at the jail. I'd invite all of you, so as long as you don't violate the Open Meeting Act, to come and tour the jail, to see what the conditions are truly like, to see what these officers work under. I would also be happy to meet with any of you, again, to avoid an Open Meeting Act problem, to discuss the data that I've compiled. It's a serious, serious issue.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. O'Neill, you're at about 4 minutes, and I started the timing late.
Oh, I apologize.
No problem.
I'd ask you to look at the studies and what's going on. We're actually lower than 2010 when DOC said hire 8 more officers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. O'Neill. I believe that the next person is Brett. Brett, would you pronounce your last name so I don't?
It's Kamisiak.
Kamisiak, that's
Yes, sir.
easy enough. Okay, Mr. Kamisiak is a Kane County Correction Officer, and you're going to discuss conditions of the employment in the jail. And is the 3-minute normal protocol okay?
No problem.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Brett Kamisiak. I am the president of the Kane County Adult Corrections Officers Union. My reason for speaking to you today is to bring to the county board the current conditions and state of our jail. The jail is currently the unsafest it has ever been. This being because of our understaffing. When Sheriff Kramer was elected, he saw immediately that the jail was being operated at unsafe levels. Because of this, he eliminated housing to federal inmates. This move was applauded by us officers, but it was portrayed negatively by the county board due to the loss of revenue it created. Sheriff Kramer also eliminated an entire housing unit of 64 detainees. Although this helped in the beginning, this proved to be a temporary solution. Our population has steadily increased, and we've begun operating all housing units with no additional officers. As a result, we have seen an increase in staff assaults, jail lockdowns, and critical incidents. In 2010, the Illinois Department of Corrections recommended that the jail needed to increase its staff by a minimum of 8 officers to maintain a safe operating level. This would have brought us to 128 officers from the 120 we had at that time. As of November 1st, 2017, we had a total of 116 officers, which is 12 short of the recommended safe operating level. Even with 128 officers, we would still have the highest inmate-to-officer ratio in the collar counties. If our staffing levels had been addressed proactively, I can assure you that the staff assaults, lockdowns, and critical incidents, most importantly, the one involving Delnor Hospital, could have been prevented. The jail staffing levels continually put us officers in an unnecessary, dangerous environment. To give you an idea, on days we have enough officers to prevent a jail lockdown, it leaves 1 officer to manage 64 detainees in an area roughly the size of this room. That also leaves only a handful of officers available to respond in an incident. If not addressed immediately, the incidents like the one involving Delnor are only going to be the beginning. In closing, I would invite each of you to come and spend time in our jail so you can see firsthand the effect this has on us officers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Officer. Next on the list is Blythe Miller. Miss Miller. I believe Miss Miller is also a Kane County Correction Officer to discuss. I believe it's to discuss safety at the Kane County Jail.
Correct.
Oh, is the 3 minutes okay?
Yes, yes. Hello, my name is Blythe Miller, and I've been employed with Kane County for 17 years. I also come from 5 generations of Kane County. I'm a Kane County taxpayer, and I voted for most of you in hopes that you would make a difference in our county. I chose a career path in corrections to make a difference in my community. Believe it or not, one of the most satisfying aspects of working as a correctional officer is the unique opportunity I have to show detainees a better way. But to be honest, it's not an easy job. We encounter people normally at their worst. The job is dangerous, tiring, disturbing, and sad. Throughout my years at the jail, I have never experienced or seen it as bad as it is now. Our staffing levels are at their lowest and continue to drop. Our senior officers are retiring, and our new hires are leaving for better paying departments. As of now, there is no incentive to stay. In all my years of working there, I can count on one hand the number of times I feared for my safety. I have always known someone had my back or help was coming. Lately, I cannot say the same. Every day I go to work in the unsafe work conditions of the current jail. I fear for mine and my coworkers' safety and lives. Without proper staffing, we have become reactionary. The jail has been dealing with the unsafe work conditions by paying overtime, mandating officers, and locking the facility down, normally on a daily basis, which only makes the detainees bored and angry. The shortages have resulted in more violence both between detainees and officers. If an incident arises, someone's life will be at risk. And the only thing we can do is call for backup that is minutes away. In the meantime, lives can be lost. Our staffing levels are so low that response time has gotten longer and the number of officers responding has gotten smaller. The detainees are not stupid. They know we are short-staffed. We are running on most days with 3, 4, even 5 officers under our normal minimum staffing number. That's leaving one officer to run 2 or 3 areas by themselves. So one officer is doing the job of 3 to 4 officers at times. You guys built a direct supervision jail, and no one is being supervised. You built a jail that has never been staffed properly. It was built, and now our staffing is at its lowest and only getting worse. We were thrown into a jail that was already understaffed. We have been maintaining and making it work, but it's not working anymore. We are here today to ask for your help. We encourage each one of you to take a tour of the jail and see for yourself what's going on. Ask the officers questions, and together we might be able to come up with a solution. If we had the appropriate staffing, the federal inmates could have stayed. The Delaware incident would have never happened. We could receive the training we want and deserve. Officers wouldn't be being attacked. Inmates would be safer. Workman's comp cases would go down. Employee attendance would improve. The facility would become manageable again. And the county wouldn't be paying out so much money on unnecessary lawsuits. If something is not done, then more horrific things are going to happen. And you guys can just keep adding zeros to the amount being paid out already. Thank you for your time, and I hope in the future we can all make a difference and make the county a safer place. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Finally on my list, I have John Breadlaw. John, if you'd come forward. I believe that Officer Breadlaw is Kane County Correction Officer, also to discuss safety at the jail.
You know, I wrote this thing out, and Mr. O'Neill, Officer Kamiziak, and Officer Miller pretty much covered a lot of it. I'm one of the ones on the midnight shift. I'm just going to give you a quick rundown and example of how 7 days went. After 2 o'clock in the morning, there were only 10 officers and 2 sergeants in the jail. Of those 10 officers, only 4 could leave their areas to respond to a situation, and that's due to county jail standard rules and regulations. That night, 2 officers were responsible for the safety and security of 237 out of the 521 detainees being housed, which is equivalent to 45% of the population. So that night, our officer to detainee ratio was 1 to 119. Day 2, after 3 o'clock, there were only 9 officers and 2 sergeants in the jail. Of those 9 officers, only 3 could leave their area to respond to a situation. That night, 3 officers responsible for the safety and security of 349 of the 530 detainees being housed, which is 66% of the population. Again, 1 to 116. Day 3, the same as day 2. Day 4, after 3 o'clock, there were only 8 officers and 1 sergeant in the jail. Of those 8 officers, only 2 could leave their area to respond to a situation. That night, we had 4 officers responsibility for the safety and security of 470 out of the 553 detainees being housed there, which was 85% of the population. So 4 officers responsible for 85% of the population in the entire jail. Day 5, the same as day 3, 9 officers, but only 1 sergeant. So we had 3 officers responsible for 65% of the jail population. And on day 7, after 2 o'clock, there were only 9 officers and 1 sergeant. Of those 9 officers, only 3 could leave their area to respond to a situation. That night, 3 officers responsible for safety and security of 360 of the 540 detainees being housed there, which is 67% of the population. That night, our officer-detainee ratio was 1 to 120. 4 out of those 7 days, we had 4 officers providing security for 2 detainees at the hospital, and 3 out of the 7 days, we had 2 officers providing security for 1 detainee at the hospital. All 7 of those days, we had 1 officer providing security for 1 specific detainee who was on 24-hour suicide watch observation. So that person could not leave that area due to the one-on-one observation. They could not leave their post. They talked about the safety and the security. You guys have all been invited. You're more than welcome to come around. Please take advantage of that. Please come and see what we see every day. That's all I have. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Bredla. Are there any other people who would like to come forward to speak? We have another slot. If not, thank you very much for your attendance. As Ms. Miller said and was echoed in all the comments, this is a very difficult job, very necessary. We certainly all agree. I know that I've been to the jail. My wife and children have visited the jail. There are board members, as the officer said, who have visited the jail. So it is very important that you've been respectfully heard and you continue to be respectfully heard. And I hope that that was also accomplished today. It's important for the board to recognize that part of what's happened in the last 4 years is that we have made substantially higher expenditures in public safety over the last 4 years. I believe that the cost of public safety has gone from approximately $25 million to $29 million. So $4 million in this one area alone. The gap that we faced at the beginning of the budget process last year was about $5.5 million. $4 million of that, could be accounted for in this area. There was a study that came out on November 29th of 2017, so about maybe 7 weeks ago. I assume that it's accurate from the Illinois Department of Corrections that came across my desk, but it may be an error. But it's titled Kane County Jail 2017 Inspection Report, dated November 29th, 2017, or the inspection took place on November 29th of 2017. On page 14, there's a question naturally that's at the heart of what we all understand is very important, where the number 1 question is, are sufficient jail officers present in the jail? And the block is checked yes. So according to this report, this review by a supervising group, and it may be an error, I assume that it's accurate, but it may be an error, that would be one of the pieces that board should be aware of. it is equally upsetting to all of us that not only is safety in the jail very important, and again, I think that Ms. Miller makes the point very clearly, not only about the difficulty, but also the sadness and the hardness of the job that each one of the correction officers provide to their neighbors. I appreciate that. I think it was Mr. O'Neill, you raised the Delnor issue, and I think one other speaker also did. That is a great concern to all the correction officers. It's also a great concern to all the board members. Recall that it was a naked, unarmed prisoner going through medical procedure to remove a part of a plastic sandal that was in his stomach, who was unshackled, not shackled to a bed in 2 places, I think the procedure is, was overpowered, or overpowered a correction officer, and then the prisoner went on what can only be described as a rampage against innocent victims. I think that it'd be constructive if it's agreed by board members that we would supply a list of wages and benefits provided in this area as part of the ongoing conversation. So I appreciate all the people who took their valuable time today to come and share what's one of our hardest responsibilities in the county. So, any other thoughts? If not, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. So moved by Mr. Smith, second by Ms. Sterrett. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, nay. Ayes have it.